Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're gonna see how to make a track like Fantasm. So it's a kind of hard industrial techno track, but it uses lots of different styles and subgenres of hard music, such as hardcore, raw style, hardstyle, or whatever. It kind of uses the same arrangement in these tracks, but sometimes with different weird elements and different kicks. We're gonna go through all of these elements, and as usual you can follow along in the track with the project file that you have in the description below. And here we go, guys. Okay, so let's start with the kick. So for this track I made 3 kicks, 2 kind of hard industrial kicks. So we have this one, we have this one, and we have this one. So the last one is more hardcore. I made it on Serum. We're gonna see that after. So let's focus first on the first kick, first industrial kick. So as usual, I use lots of layers. You know my framework. You can check my YouTube video that I did on how to make hard industrial kicks. So I'm kind of using a main kick for starters, and then I'm using rumble layers and some top kick layers. So my main kick here, it's a sample that is free from NN. So of course I have lots of group processing, so usually it was this, already quite industrial, but pretty soft at first. So I started with this, and on top of that I'm adding some top kicks to get a better transient. So I have here 2 layers. I have a snare, give that talk in the mids, and I have this metallic perk. Again, to fill up the frequencies in the mids, but also already give a kind of room here. So here nothing special, just a bit of EQ, and here a little sidechain for the transient. And here same thing, just withdrawing some few harsh frequencies that I withdraw usually around 9-10k. And I have just another top kick, but here it's more for the highs. So yeah, nothing special, it's just a kick that I've reduced just to take only the transient. So with these 3 layers, I have already this main kick and some transient shapers. And then I have a few layers for my rumble. So I'm using first these samples, so it's the same as the top kick here. So it's just a kick at first, if you want to hear it. Nothing special. And so I'm using here this kick that I have made like in 16th pattern, and just withdrawing the transient. And then I'm just saturating it and making sure I have only the lows, and just sidechaining. And this is really a sharp sidechain because I'm using here the rumble to have a fuller part here. And I have another one. So I thought the 2 were combining well and filling up a bit of the lower mids. So here it's just another kick, and same thing, I just used the 16th samples, 16th pattern, bit of saturation. Just want here the lower mids, and then I just sidechain. And for my sidechain I did the same with the rumble. I have a full sidechain here, and here it's a sharper sidechain, but I cut it a bit, so it already gives a different groove than just having this one. And yeah, that's it for this one. I also make sure it's in mono, but I do it also on the group. And finally I have my rumble. So this one is very heavy, and this is what gives this saturated rumble feeling to the whole kick. So you see, at first I use this kick, and I did the same for my second kick, but here it's an example. So I'm using any kind of kick that goes through a convolution reverb, and then I put the amp with bass mode or heavy mode. I kind of control the saturation and the amp onto whatever kind of grid that I want. So here it's more bassy because that's what I wanted for the second kick. But I think for this one, I had more mids and more highs. So I think I used the heavy mode back then when I did it. Or I can use sometimes a bit of saturation again. So I rendered this in audio. So that's what I get here. And then I want something really in the lows and lower mids. So you see, also this make it resonate. And this also changes the way it is in the sub. So then I just check with the kick. So it was a bit too much, so that's why I put this EQ. So here, when I have all of this, my frequency spectrum is quite full, and what I want is just saturate the whole thing and manage the compression to have something that's more industrial. So that's why I did. So you see there are lots of EQs and processing, but really at first what I do is compressing and saturating. This is the first saturation. Then I add a bit of compression. Sorry. So here it's mild. And then it's really about handling the frequencies. So usually when you saturate a lot like this, you have lots of these resonances here around 200 and 300 Hertz. And also I add a bit of nasty resonances around 9K, as I usually do. So that's what I do with all of these EQs. I'm really hearing, trying to see, hovering the different frequency range and see where it's too much, where it's too muddy. Sometimes I lose the punch, so I have to put it back here with this EQ. Also, it was lots of bass, so that's why I'm using lots of these EQs in the highs. And this one, for instance, to get back the highs, and with the amp. So yeah, it's really lots of EQs here, but it's what you need to do to kind of get rid of the resonances and the nasty things that you don't want. Also, I make sure the bass is in mono, because here it wasn't matching with some phase issues. I put this to audio, and when I get this, I have some other processing to reach this result. So I have also lots of other EQs, and I kind of felt it was lacking a bit of reverb, reverb gate in the mid-range, and also a bit of saturation and warmth in the mid-range. So that's what I added here. So I did a parallel compression. So it's just putting another chain, withdrawing the sub and adding an amp. So really it's adding this to the original. So you see here, it's a bit narrow and kind of lacks the highs and a bit of fullness in the mid-range. And so I add this. And also it brings back forward the highs. But I've put it here like this also. And so I'm also adding this convolution reverb that adds a bit of groove and drive, and I make sure I don't want the lows. And yeah, just a bit of EQ again to kind of balance things out. And here, if you want something wide, you can use the utility, so make sure you have the thing in mono, but then you can gain some width in the highs. And then also some limiting, which is important for this style. So yeah, it's very compressed. Sometimes it's too much, but that's what Fantasm is doing. So that's it for the first kick. And then we have our second kick. So it's same principle here, just a bit more reverb. Here I'm using this main kick. So it's a Vengeance classic kick. So I withdraw already this because I know I'm gonna saturate and it's gonna be too much, and I really want here the sub, the punch. Here I saturate the same way I did for the other one. So I have a dry chain and the other one that's saturated. So actually I could have just used directly here because I don't cut the frequencies, but whatever. So this is my main kick. Then I have my rumble. So this is coming from this one that I show you. It's just that I'm using, I think I've put, I might have used here like this. And here I have some other EQs, so balancing to get the right amount of sub, withdrawing this nasty resonancy that I didn't want, and also this one. It was a bit too much. And finally I need some transients, and I think that's here that Fantasm uses this kind of raw style punches. So it's a kind of snare, but really weird. So to do this, I use Serum. So first you need to make the volume only to get the snare, only to get the punch. So you need to put an LFO on the first oscillator, and you can construct here the kind of transient that you want. Next thing is you're gonna need a pitch envelope, like a kick. So you have to put the LFO1 to the course of the pitch of the oscillator. So you see it's a pitch envelope, and you get a kind of kick. And here you have to manage the rate. Oh, I could have used this one. Doesn't matter. And so here to get the weird sound, it's just adding the filter. So of course I have a bit of distortion. So here it's more of a kick, as you can see. Then you put some distortion and you get these weird things. Also the multiband compressor. If you want some more weird sound. And then it's really about the filter here. So I use the flange, this one. And you can try different filter cutoff. You see, and you can also use the comb or the phase. You can use also different kind of sound source. Also, you can use sometimes the bandpass filters. If I'm using like a you see, it also works. So yeah, that's pretty much how I did it. Same thing, I just render it to audio, and then I have just a bit of processing, so just a slight EQ here. To make sure it was okay on my headphones. And finally we have this hardcore kick. This is really like the classic hardcore kick. It's the same kind of principle as the snare. So I'm using a pitch envelope that's linked to the pitch of the oscillator 1, and this is a sine wave that I slightly here move to get something a bit more interesting. And I'm adding a bit of FM synthesis, that's very light actually. Also I have I think this one is to get some transient. So I'm using the noise and making just a little transient with it. And also same thing, I'm using the filter to get more nasty kind of sound and texture. And also of course some distortion. Here it's just a classic. It's a classic kick, and here you get some hardcore. And you can try different. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And yeah, just a bit more saturation with trash. Gives a bit more warmth. And also on this one I have some snare. I have an hardcore snare. So for this one, Same thing, but I use lots of distortion with the pedal here. So I think at first it's just some kind of noise. Same thing, I'm using the pitch envelope. I'm using this to make, so here I'm just like generating some noise, some weird noise, then that I'm enhancing with some resonancy with the EQ and with lots of distortion. So that's why I get here. And yeah, just using the comp filter and some other distortion to get this kind of snare. Could also have added an amp to get something. And yeah, that's it for this snare. And I have also a last snare here, so it's the same kind of principle. It's a roll style snare. So I think I'm using the same patch as the other one for the kick. Just maybe kind of different parameters here for the flange filter and maybe on the distortion. But really it's the same kind of principle. And that's it for the kick and the snares. Okay, so next we have a few drums, but I have to say Fantasm really doesn't use lots of drums in his tracks. So we have the classic clap like this. So it's just this pattern, every one bar and then a little variation at the end of a full bar. So it's just a clap, it's a 9/9 clap that I've distorted and add a bit of reverb. So here you really get noise and the nasty stuff. Then some reverb, just cutting the lows, and that's pretty much it. I think I found a few tracks where he uses open hats, but really wasn't much tracks with some drums. Sometimes I think there was a ride. I kind of mimic the only open hat that I found in this track. So it's something very sharp with a distinctive sound. And here, just very classic. I just saturate, get the thing noisy with some amp saturation, overdrive or whatever. Then I put a room and a bit of delay. I sidechain and I cut the lows. That's pretty much it. But here it's really about choosing the right sample to get something that really communicates with the kick. That's it for the drums. Then we have the main vocal. So he uses lots of chopped vocals in his tracks. It's something that are quite nasty. So he's doing also lots of edits. So of course you can take any kind of vocals from your favorite songs, old songs, commercial songs, sometimes very known famous vocal samples. Here I was inspired by some industrial sample that I found, sample pack that I have. So it's this one. So of course it's already something very processed, but I think it was fitting to the style and the track. So here I'm just adding a bit more distortion, some reverb, saturation. So here it's actually a clipper. I'm using the clipper from Ableton to kind of reduce the transient and get some more headroom for the volume. And yeah, I have lots of EQs because there were some nasty sibilances and resonances in my vocal sample. And so you see, so I have to withdraw this and then put back a little air in the sample so that it doesn't feel too narrow. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So here it's really about using your ears, your speakers, different kind of headphones to see where it resonates, making sure it's okay in the mixing phase. And yeah, I'm using different chopped parts of this vocal. So that's what I did here. A little part here, a longer part here, then some rhythm that fits with the kick, because I think he does that a lot in his track. So it's very straightforward in his track. It's really like a kick, a vocal, and that's pretty much it. Sometimes a melody with some screeches, but yeah, it's pretty minimal, his style, but at the same time very hard. So yeah, he kind of uses the kick as really the main thing to put forward in these tracks. And so yeah, here I'm just making a kind of snare roll. with the vocal, and then finally before the drop, it's the full sentence. So I accompany this with the snare rolls and the kick roll. So I use one of the kicks that I made to make a snare roll and a kick roll, so together. So it's just a simple pattern like this, and it's a 99 snare. I have also a few impacts and sweeps just to make sure my transition is smooth. So use the return channel with the reverb sometimes. So at the beginning here of the break and before my drop here, and that's pretty much it. And finally, I have the last two elements. So I have break lead. I have this synth, and I have the screech. The break lead and the synths is a preset that I found. That was FX Alien Tripod. So it's this weird sequence that I found. So here it's just about, going through all of my presets and kind of digging some things that are interesting and that could fit to the track. So I found this weird sound, and I think that since Fantasm uses lots of weird sound, I have to select a kind of weird sound for my track. So I found this one that I'm using in a two different way. So at first, just some little drops like this for my break. And then before the drop, I play it fully to get this riser. Also here it's just small patterns, while here it's an octave below. And also I'm using it here in the intro and also at the end as a synth. So it's higher octave, just putting some little parts like this. So it's the same preset, just that I had a bit of distortion. I make sure it stops the noise with this utility, because otherwise the sequence would continue. You see? So that's why I did that. And yeah, just putting some reverb, a bit of clipping to get some headroom, and sidechain, of course. And here, same thing in terms of processing, just an amp and this EQ. And that's it. And finally, we have this screech. And so for the screech, I'm using one of the presets that I did for my last video on screeches. So I think it's a Screech 5. Just change a bit of the settings, I guess. So here, what makes the sound is really the envelope that's linked to the master tuning. So it switches to 12 semitones, so an octave upper, and then go back to the original sound. And I think he uses lots of this kind of sounds in his tracks. So I think I have another example here. I just took like a plug sample. So I added this. So at first, you see this is this sample. And you get really this feeling with this kind of variation in the pitch. And then with this, you can make these kind of melodies. Well, it's not really a melody here because it's the same note, but it's really like a small pattern that's kind of dancing while it's playing. And also here, using different octave. And the sound is moving because the pitch is also moving. So you get the movement from the FM, from the noise, you get the movement from the envelope here, and you get the movement from the master tuning envelope. So it's really something very moving, and then you get something wide with the amp, the overdrive, so really saturation, compression, and also, of course, the reverb. That really gives like the wide feeling, but you have to make sure for your reverb to get something that's still clean. So that's why I'm using lots of these EQs here, because otherwise there will be too much of a mess because of the reverb. You see, here it's too much, so I'm really using this, and also here the pre-delay. Actually, it can be used as an effect. Kind of gives this reverb gate on the screech, but if you put it at 0, it will be cleaner for your reverb. And yeah, then just clipping, because I had too much transient, especially with these screeches, because I go high in the notes, and then just withdrawing the lows, and that's pretty much it. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. If you like this kind of content, please let me know in the comments. You can also support me by liking and subscribing to the channel, and thank you very much. See you in the next one.